In here. All right, we are back for another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive. What do you think of the new frames? I was kind of overwhelmed by the size of them in some ways, but I thought they were like really cool. So these are actually what's the name of this brand? Gucci. These are Gucci. These are Gucci glasses. How many other astrologers do you think are sporting Gucci's tonight? Maybe not that many. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But I just like the blue and the heavy frame. It's like, I felt like it was like a European statement. All right. Let's see who the heck is here. And thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. It's always great to spend my Sunday nights with you. Let's see. We got California Contrarian. Oh, and Night Slide. Hey, Night Slide, I saw your message on Fuentes and the rectification. I think it makes sense, you know. I mean, I keep looking at him in terms of how he has this this approach, this verbal approach with the public, and the hair, right? He's got a thick mat of hair. Now, is it Leo-like in its thickness and mattiness? I don't know. I could go with Libra rising. I'll tell you what else I could go with Nick Fuentes is Gemini rising. You may want to try to rectify that, see what happens, but I can certainly live with Libra. What's going on, Michael? Sister Nino. The Jupiter-Venus conjunction definitely gave me unexpected blessing this weekend. That's beautiful. I like that, especially when the luminaries come out and play. Healing Heart Rosie, you're looking forward to this show. Well, good. I'm looking forward to it as well. Let's see. We got Bo. What's up, Bo? And we have Barbara Boots checking in. The lovely and talented one. Hey, there's Ryan. There's Ryan, the lovely and talented one. Saving Austin, 1, 2, 3 times. So on Ryan, yes, locals, come on over. Did Robert get through his trauma release, Joan? It depends on which trauma you're talking about. Sometimes I do. And sometimes I selfishly hold on to them. Because what would life be like if we didn't have at least one trauma that we couldn't hold around and shake out? See, I still got this. If you haven't seen Swimming to Cambodia, it's an amazing movie. Spalding Gray is a great storyteller. And he talks about being stoned on a beach in Thailand where he's having this reverie, where he sees at the edge of a table in this reverie, this very Kai-stick induced reverie, right? He sees his shit, like it is a literal turd, and it's sitting there right at the edge of this table. This is in his mind's eye, of course. It's not his own personal shit on the beach. So he's having this reverie, and he says to himself, all I have to do is just knock that shit right off the table. I just knock it right off the table, and I won't ever have to deal with my shit again. But then he realized that his shit was an intrinsic part of who he was, and that it was his shit that helped him be slightly neurotic and observe life and tell stories. So he decided to spare his shit in that moment. And I don't know, he committed suicide at one point. Maybe it would have been better for him to just knock that shit off. Diane Evans is here, up in the high 90s in the foothills of the Sierras. Love the Sierras. Beautiful part of the world. Janine, what's going on, Janine? Yes, hit like and subscribe. I hope you like it. We got some ground to cover, but I will do my best to both entertain and enlighten you simultaneously. Shirley Losciavo, what's going on, Shirley? Looks like I would be headed towards that part of the universe coming up here real soon. I think my journey to what does Frank call his thing? The bungalow? What was it? The humdinger? It's a thing. I'm just kind of messing around a little bit. Jamboree. I believe it's a jamboree. And I'll be headed out to Frank's Jamboree, believe it or not. So I will leave on the 29th, which is a Friday. And I'll be spending the 30th in Arkansas. And you people in Nashville, you let me know if you want to do a live meetup, Sunday night live show somewhere in Nashville. How would you like that? We could do a Sunday night AstroLive in Nashville with a live audience. Who would like to round that up? That would be on the 31st. Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be hella fun. And if not, then we could just get together and hang out. But Nashville is definitely on the list as a destination. Let me see. I've got a few other days ahead of me. Let's see. Austin. All right, let me just take a look at this. Yeah, so we'll definitely do a Sunday night in Nashville. If you're into it, okay, yeah. Now I could go one of two ways at that point. I could either go north and sort of go through, oh, I don't know, Louisville. Got to stop in Cincinnati. Seems like it's such a happening place these days. But I probably will go the other direction. So it'll be Nashville, and then there's Knoxville, maybe Asheville, maybe Asheville. And then let's see. I'll probably get maybe like one more stop along the way, maybe one or two. So maybe we can throw Asheville in there since it's kind of on the way. And then, yeah, I'll be in New York, that part of Frank's world, for the what is that? Yeah, so that would be the 5th and the 6th, and leaving on the 7th. So I think Frank's event is on the 5th and the 6th. And then that Saturday, we're looking at doing something in New York City. So for all you New Yorkers, we've got a place picked out already. Thanks to Rob and Dan. This right here. It is the West Bank Cafe, and that's September 6th at noon. So we have space for 12 people. And Robin's going to be collecting RSVP. So if you're living in around the New York area and you want to meet up for kind of a lunch at a kind of a European thing at the West Bank Cafe, that'll be really, really cool. And that'll be on Saturday, September 6th. So we'll have one kind of official, unofficial in New York. We'll have one in Nashville if we can do a Sunday night show. And maybe if we play it by ear, we could do something in and around the Asheville area. We'll see. Okay. And then for those of you who are in that area where Frank lives, that's where I'll be that weekend. So, and I'll be stopping along the way and collecting content. I guess the only other option would be if some people wanted to meet up somewhere in Maryland. That might be interesting. Stone crabs in Maryland. I'd be down with that. Then I'm headed out in the other direction. You know, I want to be going through Roanoke. Doesn't Orlando live out there somewhere? Anyway, got a little tour coming up. Charlie from Biloxi. What's going on, Charlie? Anyone following Colonel Doug McGregor? He's a controversial fellow, isn't he? Let's see. And Shirley, I know that you live in Virginia. And no longer Maryland. I am aware. We all need a detox. Damn right. Tom Jordan's in the house. Wow. Ooh, Lisa, what a weekend. Yesterday, my landlord told me she's selling a condo. And today, I lost a cleaning property. 1/3 of my income. Oh, boy. All right. Well, I'm not mistaken. We had a little relocation chat at one point in time. It might come in handy again. Nice. Having this feeling of a calm before the storm. Things have been too quiet. Things are happening. They're just not happening at a major volume. Let's see. Who else we have here? Benito's here. What's up, Benito? Good to see you. Deep state has always stood in the way of constructive talks between the heads of state of Russia and the US. Has to do with the knowledge of exotic technology. MJ12, continuity of government. Who's running this place anyway? Do we really think humans are in charge at this point? Personally, I don't. I think of that movie, the TV series V. When I think of who's running this joint, that's what I think of. Let's see. It may be time to leave this area. Go back, revisit our relocation reading. Let's see. Christina Aphrodite. Look at that. Happy, healthy, and inspired. Love it. Yes, if you'd like an astrology reading, go right there and pick it on up. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Glemma Spank. Hey, Glemma. Lynette Jardine. Mr. Mark S. He's with us in the house. Ms. Behaving 2. Peter Biona has survived another week. Congratulations. Survival's underrated. Pouch and Namka dialed in right on. Okay. Oh, look at that. Shirley's going in the other direction. Sedona area. Lovely. And visiting my son, my first grandbaby. Wow. Cool was that? David El Narita. What's going on, David? User 13, bold frames. Yeah, that's right, man. I'm getting bold on these frames. That's right. I'm going mogul. These are mogul frames right here. These are just for the show, by the way. Nothing else. I got other frames for other things. These are my show frames. Mary Stevens, check in from Salt Lake City. Let's get a good look at Mary. Hi, Mary. Look at that. There's an all-American face right there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going Gucci. It's been all those Kardashian style upgrade videos I've been watching. It's kind of a lifestyle thing, you know. Everybody's going towards holistic and naturopathic. I'm going in the other direction. I'm going into the Kardashian lifestyle series. And the reason why, I figure that they've probably left some real Easter eggs in there that none of us are seeing. So I've been spending hours and hours and hours decoding the Kardashians. It's the first thing that came out. Let's see, Sedona Angel, what's happening? Jacqueline Galorio. Down the Wombat Hole. Get the Moonshine Venus Jupiter Day. Yes, indeed. Luxottica owns pretty much all the brands, no matter what designer. Well, these are mine. Leo King would have Gucci, but you know what? He doesn't yet, does he? It's because David's sight has not failed him. David is. I remember when I was David's age. It was. The eyesight was good. Although I had started to take to wearing reading glasses at restaurants to see a little for people that menu. Yes, you can buy me a cup of coffee. Thank you for that, Ryan. Appreciate that. Truman Capote copy. I don't know about that. I don't think Truman's framed in these blue. That's what I'm talking about. Salty Cat, what's up, Joe? Put you up here, like and subscribe. Thank you. He looks like a Libro. I like that, Libro. I'm into that. What's up, party people? Sweet Shades, thank you, Ratchet Boo. Yep. You got to have every now and then you got to have like a statement at some point in your life, right? I'm glad you're feeling better. Yes, Maurice, it is an interesting journey to wellness. Let's put it that way. Scott A.M., what's up, Scott? Good to see you. There's JJ. I wonder how JJ feels now. JJ's tastes. I'm a JJ guy. I wonder how JJ feels about the glasses. This angle with the glasses block Robert's eyes. Oh. There you go. Yeah, they'll be awesome, Charlie. You've adjusted 3 times. They just don't work. There's a thing. It's called Costco, and they will adjust the glasses for me. That's all I have to do. I can go back there tomorrow, and I won't have to touch them again. Let's see. Spalding Gray was great. He was awesome. He was awesome. Captain Kirk said the same thing as Star Trek V. My pain makes me who I am. I've been watching a lot of these people do these. I've been into like ayahuasca videos, DMT videos, LSD videos. I like the personal stories. I like the ones where they're out of control. I'm sorry. Those are my favorite. Is the ones when they're just completely out of control. I'm like, really? This shit is going on? This is crazy, right? And there are some, though, I have to say, they're actually kind of, I mean, I know they mean well and everything, but they really mean well. Like Karen Jagel. But some of them are just like so cloying. And and I feel for a lot of these people, because there are a lot of people who are really damaged, right? They're really damaged goods in a lot of ways. The people have really terrible upbringings and just super high anxiety and questions around who they are, and really searching for answers. And so you see some of these ayahuasca videos, and they're talking about the plant and the community and the people and a lot of it is a lot of it's very touching. And but it also feels like, though, I hate to say this, but it also feels like afterwards they all sound like pot people, right? They all kind of talk the same way. They all kind of have the same sort of style of their story, and it just feels like maybe they were a little more interesting when they still had their neuroses. I know, and I'm sure they're better people for it, but it does feel a little pod people like. Does anybody else ever notice that in like in like the ayahuasca community or something like that? Does anybody notice that pod people thing? Am I still doing 50 minutes of fun? John, I'm taking a break because I'm writing a book, and I need that time. Is that David? We got David in the house. I just thought I saw David. California is more like there he is. Like, what up? What's up, David? Gucci the Goats is here. David, we were just talking about my glasses and whether you would be rocking similar themes. And I thought, how do I feel about visual artists at these times? Visual arts are, I don't know. I mean, I just did a thumbnail with Ursula von der Leyen that I could never have done before my entire life, but it took me 5 seconds. And I think that there are real visual artists that will always be, I don't know, tremendous in their own right. I don't know. It feels to me like we're kind of moving on from individual expression now. It feels like we're moving on from this whole idea that like the artist is this person who is singled out and has this usually singular ability to do things that other people can't do at a level that is rarely experienced by others, right? And so we've had this place for artists in our society, and rightfully so. I mean, I feel like artists are very interesting people, and we would not have the world that we live in without artists. But it feels like that kind of whatever it was, like whether it was the writer in the garret or the painter in his loft, or whatever those things were that kept the artist sort of isolated and away from the world, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way. Like if you're a writer, you spend a lot of time alone, and it's not an easy thing to do. But the act of art itself has really been, well, in a lot of ways, Promethean. We were using this idea of Prometheus and the sun and Mercury being the Promethean level right now, or a Promethean position. And art has always almost felt that way. Like Picasso was an asshole, but when he does Guernica, it's like he's reaching into the abyss in some ways, right? If we're talking about art at that level, that there's something about, kind of the raw, exposed nerve of the artist and the commitment to that process that is very singular. But I also feel like it's leaving. It feels like it's leaving our existence, because all these people have all these tools at their disposal that they've never had before, right? So they have audio tools, they have AI tools, they have AI imagery, AI visual. And I'm not saying that that's, I mean, we had tools even before that. We had things like Ableton or GarageBand, or any of the Adobe products, and it gave people a wider template to create from, in a way that they had never been able to like do so before. Like I'm a terrible drawer, but I'm a really good collagist. And so when I found like Adobe Illustrator or whatever, it was great. It was like all of a sudden I could do things with this picture, and fade it, and it just feels like all those tools are just open for so many people now. So I feel like the role of art is going to be a much more collective experience. I mean, it already is in a lot of ways. And the downside is that sometimes, like if you look at music, for instance, that there are periods of music that are just kind of unparalleled. Like we'll never see them again, right? Like the birth of bebop. We will never see the birth of bebop again. Like it happens at a particular time, right? And then it kind of ends at a particular time when, cool jazz comes in, Miles Davis comes in, and you get sort of the California sound. But it happens, it erupts, And there are these eruptions that occur. If you're still in the music world, you have like free jazz, atonal experimentation, that all erupts. Amiri Baraka, Charles Gale. You have all these people that are playing, Ornette Coleman, just really out there stuff. So you have these explosions of artistic creation and eruption. I mean, even the folk scene in the 1960s is part of it, right? Like the early folk scene. But then it goes away, right? We have these like these small movements, or sometimes they're bigger, and they explode and they become culturally important. And now I don't think we really have that as much anymore. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. We just have different tools, and different people are able to, create with the tools. Like a meme. A meme is something that really didn't exist 30 years ago. Like the closest you got to a meme was like a political cartoon. And the meme took the political cartoon to a whole other level. And if you, had Photoshop and, some good ideas, you could make interesting, artistic, and creative memes, and they would be disruptive, right? Because that's another part and function of art, is it being disruptive. So where are we going to be with art? It just feels to me like it's not going to be in the same place as sort of the artist as kind of special torture species. I don't think that's going to exist anymore. I feel like the tools are ubiquitous, and there may be different kinds of art forms in the future that will be beyond what we can comprehend. But for now, I feel like it's all just kind of played out, regurgitated, and being sort of recontextualized. And it's all, to me, it's all Pluto and Aquarius. That's what it feels like. It's like, because if you go back to Pluto and Leo, it's like there is this idea that there is this great artist. You go back and look at the directors, the big directors during the 1960s and 70s, and they have that larger than life, Promethean stealing fire from the gods, like Coppola. Like everything that Coppola did for Apocalypse Now, you can never get away with now. Period. End of story. You can never, ever, ever, ever make that movie now. But there was something about the creative audacity and the vision of one man and that movie that could never be pulled off at that scale ever again. And I think you could probably put The Godfather in there too, but he had to break a lot more rules with. Let me see. You need a mic. You just got it. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that he was having to deal with the studio on The Godfather, but everything he did with Apocalypse Now was against the law, against the book, you name it. He broke every single rule, including hiring Marlon Brando, right? And there are other filmmakers who were similarly possessed by a kind of a singular vision, like during that time. And this was, and there were artists, there were musical artists who were, again, sort of possessed by, like whatever you think of the Rolling Stones. When they decided to do their Satanic Majesty's Request, they were convinced on some level that they were off on some kind of unique Luciferic artistic creation, right? They're gonna, oh, we're gonna show the Beatles. We're gonna one up those fucking Beatles. And their Sergeant Pepper, fuck that, man. We're going, 3,000 light years from home, right? So this is what people were kind of, doing at that time. And I feel like, when Bob Dylan writes, Blonde on Blonde, like he's going for his own kind of like, this is it. This is my bite at the jugular zeitgeist. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, another example, right? This is what, in a lot of ways, great art really tried to aspire towards during that. And there was like somebody was possessed with some kind of a vision. And look at Werner Herzog with Fitzcarraldo, right? He was absolutely possessed. He became possessed by this story of this guy, Fitzcarraldo, who was an Irishman who decided to fucking build an opera hall in the Amazon. Like, who does that? I mean, the original guy, Fitzcarraldo, actually wanted that to happen. He wanted to build a beautiful European fucking marble opera hall in the Amazon so he could bring, people like Jenny Lind and all these opera singers to the Amazon. Like, it's a crazy story. So Werner Herzog says, well, he's so crazy. And that was his idea. Well, this will be my idea. And so he decides to make a movie version of Fitzcarraldo. And it basically, the movie becomes the damn building of the opera hall in the middle of the Amazon. And so when you ask about things like art, right? Art requires audacity in a lot of ways. It requires audacity. And sometimes audacity will let you land just flat on your face, right? Just absolutely flat on your face. But on the other hand, this gets us into that Promethean territory, right? Stealing fire from the gods, the creative act, and the fire and the light of knowledge, right? And there is something to sort of throwing yourself into the arena of risk or high art or an artistic experience. And sometimes you fall flat on your face, Sowing the Seeds of Love by Tears for Fears, an album I actually like, but an album where they overreached. In that regard, they were Icarus and flew too high for the sun. I feel like we're in a different space. And it feels more collaborative in a lot of ways. And I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. It's like the time of ego. Like, I feel like we're in this period where we should be able to know who we are, just know who we are and be okay with who we are. And if we have certain skills and gifts and abilities that are self-aware, where we're self-aware of, you should use them. Why sit on them? Right? Like, who else is going to come around and help you self-actualize. But we don't have everything at our disposal, right? And that was always one of the cool things about what would happen when we would get together out here in Texas, is that everybody had a little bit of something that they would bring to the table. Like, you didn't have to be able to run the whole show, or you didn't have to be able to, even run a workshop. There was a niche for everyone. And I've always been a big fan of that. And I feel like we're coming into that more and more and more. And so this whole idea of ego is, how do I say it? It's in a lot of ways it's working its way. Like, it's still there. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of ego in this world, but it's working its way out of the culture. When we have all these outer planets, like, you could make a case that Aries is very um, sort of self-oriented, but not when Saturn's in Aries, and certainly not when Neptune is in Aries. That whole idea of the self just gets kind of washed away with Neptune, right? And what's left with Saturn in Aries, well, that's debatable. Maybe we should talk a little bit about that tonight. But again, where's the self there? There is no self. Pluto in Aquarius, we're into the soul of the group. There is no self there. Uranus and Gemini. I mean, yeah, Gemini is a personal sign, but there's the self, and then there's the other self, right? There's the ego, and then there's the non-ego. So astrologically, it's not about us, but it is. You can't really fully divest from the system. And that's something, by the way, that comes through some of these crazy fucking, like, Datura and Salvia and some of these really, really wild videos that I've been watching. No matter how much people talk, were they affected by it? Absolutely. Did it end their lives? No, not at all. In fact, they kept going. And for some of them, I'm not sure that was probably what they wanted to do in the moment, right? So even in those moments where you are just completely getting splattered on the windshield of an alternative cosmos, you still exist, right? Like, this is the one thing that comes up, is like, there's still a you. You may not be the you that you think you are. There could be multiple yous across multiple lifetimes in multiple timelines, all happening simultaneously, by the way. And you knowing each and every one of them, they could all be you, but guess what? There's still a you. Crazy, right? There is still a you. All right, let's take a look at the chart of where we are now. And this is, by the way, not a, we do a really interesting dance with ego and identity. It's very fascinating what we do. Let's see. I'll do that a little bit. Should we be here? Oh, it's one of those things. We got to stop sharing. Okay, now I got to go back. Here we go. We're going to look at the chart of the moment. And then we're going to talk about Europe tonight and what's going on with free speech, and what they've done with Ursula von der Leyen. We got to do a little Mercury retrograde expose on Europe's most favorite woman with whips. There we go. All right. So let's take a look at where we are. Okay. So, man, the sun is way out in front. We got 12 degrees. Looks like we're about to move into a new phase of Mercury, aren't we? We are about to move into a new phase of Mercury. We should probably talk about that. All right. Yes, for all you Mercury retrograde lovers and haters, Mercury here is about to go direct. And guess when? Tomorrow. That's right. Direct at 15, was it 4 degrees, 15, 4 degrees, 15 minutes. There we go. And then we're coming up on Tuesday the 12th. Hey, full sail ahead, right? So we like that. So there's Mercury. By tomorrow, kicks in, little station, and then it moves ahead. How's this been for you, this Mercury retrograde? It's been, I got to tell you, for me, it has been tricky. That's the word I would use. Tricky. That's all I'll elaborate on for now. But it's going to be good moving direct, right? One of the things that people have just gotten really exposed during this Mercury retrograde. I mean, I just feel like, we're still talking about the Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens fallout. And the reason why is because now all these people are going into Tucker's past where, I mean, let's be honest. Let's have an honest conversation about look, I like Tucker Carlson. Is he a deep state guy? CIA baby? Sure. Absolutely. Has he been 100% forthright and truthful from day one? No, he hasn't. Was he an obnoxious prick with a bow tie? Yes, 100%. Is he role playing now? No, I don't think he's role playing, but I think Tucker is really complex. I think he's very, like, when you figure out that, and maybe when you connect all the dots, they're not that complex anyways. But when you figure out that Tucker Carlson was an avid deadhead, like, he is kind of he's one of these guys that, strange tales from the canyon. Like, he's not completely there, but he's kind of there. Like, he does grow up in Southern California. A lot when he grows up, though. I think Tucker's born in, I think, 1969, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, I'm 9 years old in 1969, and the Manson family's happening, right? 1969. And I'm living in Southern California. So we know about these things. He doesn't even know about it yet. It will take Tucker at least until, I would say, 1988, when he's around 19 years old, right? And he's in Nicaragua. There's pictures of him with the Contras in Nicaragua. So Tucker has this weird connection, right? And then all this stuff is just starting to come up in the last week. This is all very Mercury retrograde, and how it all got triggered when Candace and Tucker decided to go after Nick. And we did a whole show on this last week, right? But the following week has all been about continuing expose around Tucker and his past and how poorly he treated what's his name, the paleo conservative that always ran for Pat Buchanan. Like, he always dumped on Pat Buchanan. He dumped on 9/11. He dumped on Ron Paul. So Tucker couldn't have been further away from the truth when he first started out. He was a deep state diaper baby. And we know this. And I had talked about this years ago as it related to his father, Dick Swanson, and all those groups that Tucker was a part of. And he said to us that he applied for the CIA and they turned him down. We don't know that to be true. That's just him saying that. And maybe he was. And don't get me wrong, I like Tucker. I like what he did with Ted Cruz. Sometimes people can be imperfect tools of perfection, if you know what I mean. Like, every now and then, somebody will come along and they won't be perfect. But for that moment in time, they can transcend, in some ways, their limitations around imperfection. And you can sort of look past certain things for a minute, as long as you're getting sort of, quality information, and it seems to be feeding the system rather than taking away from it. Now, where it got weird was when they decided to go after Nick in the press conference, or their interview. And I'm not even sure why they had to go there. And Glenn Greenwald brought something up that I thought was really important, which I agree with. And it has to do with the fact that Tucker, if he is going to call Nick a Fed, then he should have proof. And not just a sort of result of this reflexively kind of left style ad hominem put down. Like, if he's going to go there, he should definitely be going there and bringing back the receipts. So this last week, again, this is all the retrograde stuff, has been very interesting, right? It's been very interesting just watching all this material just get unearthed by people, and not just by Nick Fuentes, but by people who are now very interested in uncovering the truth around who or what Tucker Carlson purports himself to be. Now, will Nick Fuentes have to undergo that kind of scrutiny? He's not the one that was being called out. I mean, he was, but the burden of proof is on Tucker, right? If Tucker says that he's a creepy little gay Fed that lives in his mother's basement, the proof is on Tucker to prove that. It's not on Nick to prove to him, oh, like I'm banging 2 chicks a night over here in my mother's basement, and I'm not a Fed. I don't know what he has to do that. But this Mercury retrograde, we're going to talk more about it
And that's just kind of one of the things that has come up over this last week, right? It's just more and more like, well, Tucker, you open your mouth, here you go. And the thing about Tucker is that he's like American royalty. You know, people, Tucker will have gone out to dinner and will continue to go out to dinner and will have social opportunities with people that none of us, well, maybe some of you are pretty interesting and connected, but most people will never have any connection with, right? It wouldn't have been out of the realm of possibility for Tucker Carlson to be seated at a table somewhere, like in some Tony sort of club for men or something like that, within 5 feet of David Rockefeller. Like, would not be out of the question whatsoever. And so when we look at Leo, bring this into the astrological realm, we look at Leo's royalty, right? So Tucker's like American royalty. And we begin to look at not just Tucker, but we begin to look at this whole sort of galaxy in some ways of stars that occupy our space. And Tucker's certainly one of them. And another one is, of course, Donald J. Trump. You know, he might, in terms of the star list, right, he might have the most pull right now. You know, Donald Trump might be the equivalent of, I don't know, who like an actor in his prime. Like Trump is clearly not in his prime. He's definitely, you know, what Trump reminds me of right now. Trump reminds me of like around 1965 John Wayne. That's what he reminds me of. John Wayne does the movie The Green Berets, which is like the most pro-American anti-Vietnam War film ever made. Right? That's John Wayne. He's going to do the green fucking berets. That seems like something Trump would do. And so he manages, though, right? Like he manages, Wayne, to carve out a few little interesting roles there towards the end. Like he does the Cowboys and he does True Grit. And then he does that terrible remake with Katharine Hepburn about the African Queen. It's terrible. But those two movies, what is it, True Grit and the Cowboys, those are kind of like the last movies that Wayne still has some of that star power. And it feels like Trump is like kind of that version of John Wayne. I don't think he has a bunch of blockbusters left in him, right? But he may have one or two memorable roles before this whole thing goes down. Now, one of the things that, again, we're talking about the royal decree, right, with Mercury retrograde. What did Trump do this last week? He said, well, if you're going to have a natural disaster and you're going to depend on some FEMA money, you're gonna have to bend the knee with Israel. That to me, it was like, what the fuck? Like he got that from Greg Abbott in Texas. I know he did. Because he was in Texas 2 weeks ago. And I know Abbott pulled him aside. He said, Don, can I call you Don? Sure, Greg. I call you Greg. You can call me Don. I'm just never quite sure, Mr. President, but I just feel like we're so close on a lot of things. In fact, the next time that I go to Israel, I want to go with you. I want to get right up to that wall right next to you, Mr. President. And I want us to be head to head, wall to wall. That's where I want to be with you. That's how close I feel with you. So, Don, let me just tell you something here. You know, when we had Harvey, we had a hell of a time down there in Rockport, and had all this disaster relief money. And I decided that I was going to tie it to making sure that they were going to not divest or strike or do anything with Israel. They basically had to sign a waiver to get that money from Texas FEMA. Now, it got held up in court, but I'm telling you, if we want to bring these people under control and we keep having these natural disasters, then if we can tie them to essentially not taking any action against Israel and tying that to their relief funds, well, disaster is going to hit somebody sometime, somewhere, don't you think, Don? And that's what happened. So Trump came out, and that's what he said. He said that if there is a natural disaster and you apply for FEMA money, you have to agree to not boycott, divest, or strike Israel. This is now going to be a national requirement. Now, somebody somewhere inside of his base maybe got him and said, hey, listen, that's a little aggressive for where we are now. We want that. Don't get us wrong. We want that, but it's a little aggressive. So why don't you reel it back in a little bit, which he did, right? But the cat's out of the bag, right? And that was that Mercury retrograde. And he had to walk it back a bit because there were people who were not, they were not all that thrilled about having to co-sign to Israel just to get their relief funds. In what world does that make any sense, by the way? It makes no sense whatsoever. So here we go. We're at kind of this critical point here with Mars just getting ready to station and hang out with this this Pluto retrograde. And I would say over the course of the next 72 hours, it'll get better. Like you won't have to retract as much if you put your foot in your mouth. But I would also be very clear about what it is that you are trying to clear up. Now, if you've just held off for as long as you can before you got to tell somebody something that they need to hear, just wait a couple days. And you know, there's always the key factor is, would you like to hear what I have to say? If they say yes, then you know what happens when you do that? When you get somebody to co-sign in that moment, number one, they're creating a contract, but it's also taking the edge off of your animosity. I mean, think about it. Think about having just an absolute machine gun burst come off your lips without getting the other person to even say, yeah, I'm okay with hearing that. Right? I mean, saying it at that level versus saying it at a conscious level, that's completely different. Because now it's like, oh, now they're willing to hear what I have to say. Now I have responsibility to say what I have to say in a way that is meaningful, and I'm not just taking a dump on them. So that whole we'll call it a trigger pivot, is really critical. So yeah, I mean, tomorrow, the next day, if you need to get some things off your chest, just ask. Say, hey, can I just share something with you? Yeah, sure, go ahead. 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to talk it out. And when you do that, it's a very Libra thing. It's a very Mars Libra thing. That's being active, right? Mars in Libra is being actively diplomatic or actively synergistic. It's finding that way through, right? It's not ramming through like Mars and Aries, but it's like, would you mind if I ram through here? Do I have permission to ram through here? That would be Mars and Libra. And I don't know how it's been for people the past couple of days with Mars Saturn opposition. Mars Neptune opposition, those are draining. Just in terms of just energy. That's just an absolute drain on the battery. And I'm just not sure, I mean, for me, shit, I've been in this like prolonged kind of recovery period here, like the last week or so. And it's just, it's hard to keep those batteries charged when you've got Neptune just siphoning off the other side of this thing. So let's just take a look at that for a minute. I like the fact that Mars is in trine with Uranus, is in trine with Pluto. There's a lot of energy there. You got the sextile with Mercury. Mercury's about ready to go direct. So there's a lot happening with Mars, I think, in a very positive way. And if you can move forward through partnership in a positive way with Mars and Libra, that's even better. When you try not to act or speak for other people with Mars and Libra, because there is kind of this weird assumed thing. It's kind of like when this guy who's the mayor of Kerrville, and he's yelling at people because they're raising their hands and they're being boisterous because, well, they're not raising their hands, but they're being boisterous because they want their question asked, right? And they can only get 3 questions per press conference. And so they're kind of, getting agitated and blurting things out. And the mayor of Kerrville says, well, that's not how we do things here in Kerrville. I'm like, who the fuck is we? That's not how you do things in Kerrville, right? That's how you're choosing not to do things. But don't lump me in with your we. And I bet there's a lot of other people that don't want to be lumped in with your we. And that's like a Mars Libra thing, right? It's just like assuming that, well, because that's not how I do it, I'm speaking for the royal we. And you're not. You're absolutely not. So I think there's some great energy with this Mars. My only issue is that you don't squander pearls before swine. That's the only issue here, right? I think the application of Mars, if you're going to drive something, I mean, really, really drive something, I wouldn't say it has to be selfless. It's very difficult to divest the self, but it shouldn't be dependent upon some kind of reactionary force, right? So Neptune and Saturn would be kind of a reactionary force. Like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show these fuckers right here. Oh, they thought that they could get away with firing me. Well, just wait. I am a lot more popular than they thought I was. right? I mean, this is what you want to do is you want to take any kind of victimization and blame out of any concerted action. Now, this is going to be a very interesting week in terms of legalities with Mars moving into Libra. And there's all this legal stuff coming up, right? Like Trump wants to sue the New York Times for that little card. Has he actually hired a lawyer and sued them yet? Like, I feel like there's going to be more of this stuff from the past because we do have Neptune retrograde, Pluto's retrograde, Mercury until tomorrow is retrograde. So we have these outer planets that are bringing things, right? They're bringing things up from the past, whatever it is. Whatever it is. I feel like there's a lot of really righteous energy, but you have to watch out for, I don't know, feeling socially repressed. Like, don't fall into being a victim. This is not the week to go into victimhood. Now, be careful here too, because you may assume that you are standing up for the rights of other people with this Mars Saturn Neptune opposition. Don't assume that. And you might be, right? But you also have to make sure that those people know that you're actually wanting to stand up for them and advocate for them. And while that's not a bad thing, sometimes people have pride and they want to take care of shit themselves. So that's another thing to watch out for. Just because we have this energy with Mars and Libra, which to me is like, again, it's social justice, but it's not social justice in the way that it has always been defined. Like social justice, SJWs, that's all really like something that's emerged out of the last 20 to 25 years. But Mars and Libra does have that social justice energy. Just make sure that if you're like going out on a limb for somebody, that they want you to do it. Don't make them feel like they're incapable of doing it. Because that's another part of this Mars, Neptune, Saturn opposition is if the other person can carry the ball and run with it and do it ably, allow them to do it, right? Or at least work together, fullback, tailback tandem, that sort of thing. But I think it's great. I think it's a great week in terms of getting things off your chest, creating, communicating clearly from the heart, especially once we get Mercury sorted out. It goes direct here in a couple days. And situations can change very, very quickly. Just keep that in mind. Situations can change very quickly. Now, tomorrow, we're going to have that moon move closer, deeper into Pisces. And by Tuesday, we're going to have that moon conjuncting Saturn, conjuncting Neptune, getting ready to move into that opposition with Mars. Circle Tuesday off as a day. That's a hot collar day. That is a hot collar day. There's not a lot of patience. People are pissed. Imagine that. Not a lot of patience. People are pissed. And I feel like we're getting close to some major issues around housing. And that's in this country. Of course, they exist everywhere. But we're going to have that moon conjunct Saturn, conjunct Neptune. And it's like the revelation of who lives where and who pays for where they're living versus other people, like, and where they're not living. Like, that's going to be huge. You know, and when I think of Aries, I think of like the new people, right? Like the pioneer colonies, whatever you want to call them. Um, the other thing here to keep a very close eye out for, again, Moon, Saturn, Neptune, all in Aries, right? Opposing Mars and Libra. I think that there's going to be a much more concerted effort for people to move out of van life. I've been seeing some of this stuff, right? Like Trump's new clarion call to end homelessness. What does that really mean, to end homelessness? Does he mean that getting people off the streets who are dependent upon fentanyl and whatever else to get through the day, does he mean that kind of homeless? Or does he mean people that are more on the, um, the pioneer tip or even the van life tip, right? I don't think Trump is into it. I don't think he's into it. I don't think he understands it. I think there are things about America that Trump does not understand. And that doesn't make him a good American or a bad American, right? Like Trump would want to live in the highest suite in his building and to make it look like, Apollo's lair. Like that's how Trump would like to live. He doesn't understand how somebody like Thomas Massey could take all that time and, you know, shear that rock and cut the wood and not use one single nail and create his entire home. Like Trump doesn't understand that. And Trump doesn't understand in a lot of ways sort of this nomadic American experience to be free, right? Because for Trump, he's always defined his freedom uh, through financial status. Like if he had enough money, he could buy anything, whether it was a beautiful woman or a beautiful penthouse or maybe even a beautiful presidency, depending upon how far you want to take that. Like, so for Trump, that's how I believe he's always known this idea of freedom. I'm not even sure I don't want to really completely speak for him, but I'm not even sure he really probably feels the ecclesiastical freedom of completely giving himself over to Christ, right? There was this one TV show where it was a softball. It was one of these softball, it was around 2016. And he's running for president. And um, it's a softball show. And it's one of these, like, I don't know, 700 clubs or whatever, something like that. And the guy who's the host, he asked Trump, he said, have you ever gotten down on your knees and repented to God? And Trump kind of looked at him like, What are you talking about? uh, and then he realized that he couldn't be rude. So he talked about how he was married by Norman Vincent Peale and how religion played a large role in his life. But then the guy keep coming back to that question. Yeah, but have you ever gotten down on your hands and knees and repented and in front of God? And Trump, did what Trump does. He kind of slid off the hook of the question. But the reason I bring it up though is not because of Trump's um, sort of religious affiliation and status. It's this idea of being free, right? This idea of being free, that there are people who, once they have given their lives over to the Lord, they're free. Like they have no burdens, right? They have responsibilities, they have things that they have to do, but the heaviness, the burden of their life has been lifted by the strength of their Lord and their Savior and their brother in Christ, right? I mean, so there's a freedom in that. That's just kind of like one version, and I think probably the more, agnostic side of that would be, something along the lines of Easy Rider or Dharma bombs or, the electric Kool-Aid acid test, Kerouac on the road, right? Or even Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. I mean, this is the type of freedom that is inherent in some ways in the American soul, right? It's the soul of the nomad. It's the soul of the pioneer, right? It's whether you believe in Neil Armstrong and flying to the moon or not. It's the same thing. It's Craig Breedlove who's trying to, hold on to a rocket on the Salt Lake Flats and do 550 miles per hour. I mean, these are the things, this is one of the things that when Russ and I were talking about the top 10 things we loved about America or being Americans. And that was one of the things that I had stuck in there. And so Trump doesn't understand this. He doesn't understand this idea of being free. Like, what if Barron just decided that he wanted to go follow what's that band? The Zeppelin knockoff band. And let's say Fish was still around. The Fish reunion tour. Trey Anastasio. And Barron says, "Hey, Dad, I just want to go follow Fish." Like, what? Yeah, I want to swim with the fish, Dad. Like, you never get a sense that anybody in the Trump family is like that. You can kind of tell Don wants to. Like, Don wants to go there. You can kind of tell. Every fifth snipple will tell you that. But it's not something that's a part of like the makeup of that family. Like they don't. He doesn't understand that. So, and I'm not saying that he is going to be gunning for people who are homesteading or live in the van. I know that they're going to make it harder. They're going to make it harder for people to live in their cars. They're going to make it harder for people to live in van life. And so what we have here is an encroachment. And that's why I'm bringing this conversation to the moon. Coming right in here, conjuncting with Saturn, conjuncting with Neptune, and opposing Mars and Libra. And how free are we going to be? Like, one of the things that was in the big, beautiful bill was they're going to sell off about 10% of the federal lands that they have, and most of them, by the way, are in the West, right? So that's a lot, and who knows what lands or what they're doing now. I mean, there could be campgrounds, as far as we know at this point, right? So this is going to be an interesting week, and it feels like we're waking up from the machine. This is what this week feels like. It's like, okay, there's that movie, Midnight Express. Don't ever talk to a Turkish Persian about Midnight Express. They will tell you that everything about it is completely wrong. But it's a compelling movie, and of course, it's about a Canadian who gets busted for trying to get hashish out of Turkey, and he winds up in a Turkish prison. And the actor is played by Brad Davis, who, very intense guy, died too early. And there's this one moment where he's literally at the bowels of this sort of very dark Turkish prison, and all these guys are walking in a circle. They just walk in this circle, and they just chant and mutter and chant and mutter and chant and mutter. They're all, they're not in very good shape. And at a certain point, he just stops and he starts walking against the circle. And that's literally the turning point of the movie. Oliver Stone wrote the script. I thought it was a pretty good job. Now, is that what this week feels like? Kind of. It's like, okay, what are you asking us to do here? What's the next layer of demands that you're gonna put on us here? Oh, we can't do this. We can't move about the country freely, or the world. I'm telling you, they're gonna try to start to pull the drawstrings in here pretty quickly. And a lot of it has to do with, well, it's the same things. Speech and liberty of movement are the same. They're basically the same thing, right? They're both ruled by Mercury. Speech, liberty of movement. To be able to say what you say, where you want to say it, right? That's all part of it. So it doesn't matter if you say it on the steps of the White House, which you can, by the way, depending on what you say. I mean, some language is volatile. Or if you wanted to say it on the steps of the, I don't know, Miriam Davies Opera Hall in San Francisco, right? I mean, theoretically, you still have that right to move around and say those things, depending upon generally what you're going to say. The problem here is that over this Mercury retrograde, things have gotten a bit tighter, haven't they? So before I go off on that tangent and bring in Ursula von der Leyen, let's just quickly take a look at tomorrow morning. If you get up in time, you're going to see Venus and Jupiter as one magnificent, blazing being in the sky. And Jupiter is right there conjunct Sirius. Venus is right there conjunct Jupiter, conjunct Sirius. This is a serious moment in time, right? This would be the equivalent of viewing the God star. Like if you were an ancient tomorrow you would get up to view the God star on 8/11 because it would be conjunct. If you were playing slot machines in Vegas, you'd be hitting the jackpot. So if you have a clear sky tomorrow, I'd get up before the sun comes up and check this out, right? Because it's not going to be the same next year. And by the time we get into these coordinates next year, Jupiter will be in Leo, and Venus it just won't work, right? This trifecta, Sirius, Jupiter, Venus, it's going to be a very interesting stellium. Get up, look at it, take it in. Maybe it has something to tell you. The moon is coming off that fullness. It will be kind of, I wouldn't say across from it, but you can definitely see these things in the sky, right? The Venus Jupiter will be unmistakable. So definitely check that out. And for you people that are out there trying to sell a home, I'd get up tomorrow. If you're trying to sell a home, I would get up tomorrow and I would look at Venus and Jupiter in the sky, and I would use that as an affirmation. Just use it as an affirmation. Let go of your fear and just affirm and decree that you will sell the property that you have at the price that you need to get it at, or you need to release it at. Either way, just, you don't even have to ask. Like, just look and affirm. Look and affirm, right? See this as being literally an affirmation from God, right? God is like, I got your back. Just acknowledge me. Just acknowledge me through this starlight, this starlit magnificence in the sky. So remember, I got your back. Okay. All right. We can go with that. I'd say all in all, it's a creative week. And if you can get it going with another person, then by all means, fire it up. Okay. We are going to talk about what's going on in Europe. And one of the things that I wanted to remind people of here is who we're dealing with Ursula von der Leyen. So a long time ago, long time ago, I actually spent a fair amount of time going down her rabbit hole. That sounds a little rude, doesn't it? Going down Ursula's rabbit hole. But I did. And one of the things that find this. One of the things that they had done is that they had kind of whitewashed Ursula von der Leyen. They whitewashed her YouTube. And there was a lot of very interesting information. So since we're still in Mercury retrograde, let's do this. Let's go back and and resurrect some of her less stellar qualities. Okay. All right. So to me, this has always been kind of mind blowing, right? When I first saw this on her Wikipedia page. Hold on one second, I gotta get the right one. It was like, why did they allow this on her Wikipedia page? It was kind of mind blowing. Now, this is somebody that captured the Wikipedia stuff. Okay. So let me bring this up here. Hold on a second. Let me find a better one. There's a lot of theoretical connections between her and the Nazis, which I don't really. I'm not sure I buy it completely. The Rothschild connection. Now that's interesting. That's interesting. Let me see if I can find it here. So what we want to do is we want to establish her slave owner past. That's what we really want to establish. Let's see what we have here. Here we go. All right. So this is our little Mercury retrograde. Where is it? Right there. Okay. The sinister slave owning background of Ursula von der Leyen. Now, keep this in mind. This was on Wikipedia. Okay. It's gone now, completely scrubbed. All it has is a lot of her quote unquote accomplishments, of which there are very few. Check this out. Unelected president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen and her husband are among the world's richest physicians, dubbed Dr. Death because of her pivotal part in the dissolution of the European Union and support for the Kiev regime. She was born on October 8th, 1958 in Ischels, Germany, as of June 1st, 2023, has a net worth of approximately $5 million, but her big pharma husband is a COVID era billionaire. Okay, so her husband, who is Mr. von der Leyen, comes from a family of European silk traders. So it wasn't like he made his money overnight in the COVID world. Okay. So let's get into some of this here. She was born and raised in Brussels, where her father, Ernest Albrecht, was one of the first EU civil servants. Brought up bilingually in German and French, she is of German and British American descent. She moved to Hanover in 1971. Do you know what's in Hanover? The Rothschilds. The Rothschilds are in Hanover, where her father entered politics to become minister president of the state of Lower Saxony in 1960. So you just enter politics and you just become president of Lower Saxony, just like that. It's that easy. As an economics student at the notoriously left-wing school, the London School of Economics, which is where Mick Jagger went to school, she lived under the name Rose Ladson. And this is really interesting, right? Rose Ladson. That was her name. Why did she name herself Rose Ladson? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. It is the family name of her American great-grandmother from Charleston, South Carolina. Great-grandmother. That's grandmother, great-grandmother. That's 2 generations. Not that long. After graduating as a physician from the Hanover Medical School in 1987, she specialized in women's health. Of course she did. In 1986, she married fellow physician Heiko von der Leyen of the von der Leyen family of silk merchants. You know how long these people are making money off of fucking silk? Centuries. A mother of 7 children, she was a housewife during the 1990s and lived for 4 years in Stanford, California, where her husband was on faculty at Stanford University. Returning to Germany in 1996. Von der Leyen's grandparents were the cotton merchant Karl Albrecht, 1875 to 1952, and Mary Ladson Robertson, 1883 to 1960, an American who belonged to a plantation-owning family of the Southern aristocracy from Charleston, South Carolina. So Ursula von der Leyen's American grandparents were some of the largest slave owners in the Western world. Her American ancestors played a significant role in the British slave-owning aristocracy and colonization of the Americas. Van der Leyen, née Albrecht, descends from many of the first English slavers of Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Barbados, and from numerous colonial-era governors. Among her ancestors were slave owner Carolina governors John Yeamans, James Moore, Robert Gibbs, Thomas Smith, and Joseph Blake, Pennsylvania Deputy Governor Samuel Carpenter, and the American Revolutionary and Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, James Ladson. The Ladson family were large plantation owners. Her ancestor, James H. Ladson, owned over 200 slaves by the time slavery in the United States was abolished. Her relatives and ancestors were among the wealthiest in British North America in the 18th century. She descends directly from one of the largest British slave traders of the era, Joseph Ragg. Carl and Mary were parents of Ursula von der Leyen's grandfather. The psychologist, Karl Albrecht, now that guy's pretty famous, right? Who is known for developing a new method of meditation for his research on mystical consciousness. She might be a witch. Ursula Gertrude von der Leyen, née Albrecht, served in the federal government of occupation in Germany from 2005 to 2029. This is her preparation period for becoming head of the EU. As the longest-serving member of Angela Merkel's cabinet, she is a member of the center-right Christian Democratic Union and its EU counterpart, the European People's Party. In 1971, she relocated to Hanover, where her father became the CEO of the food company Balsen and was involved in state politics in Lower Saxony. So anyway, she's not who she seems. And I guess Michael Walsh wrote this story. She's not who she seems at all. And one of the things that, if you've been paying attention to van der Leyen and what's going on in Europe, is that there's a rising tide of censorship starting to take place, which is incredibly disturbing. Really disturbing. Let me see if I can find this. This is from June 18th. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Now, what she did recently was she was bad. She was a bad person. So this is just from 9 days ago. Let me show you the level of censorship here. Remember, this is all Mercury retrograde stuff, right? So this happens during Mercury retrograde. EU did not retain texts sought by journalists on COVID vaccine deal. The European Union acknowledged for the first time that a top official reviewed the messages but said had no duty to keep them despite intense interest. So they have all these texts that are being sent to the EU by accredited journalists asking significant questions about the efficacy of the vaccine and all the things that go along with it. And what does she do? She gets rid of them. When the European Union secured a deal to purchase up to 1.8 billion doses of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine in early 2021, there was great interest in how the bloc had managed to clinch an agreement seen as a major victory. So when it came to light that Ursula von der Leyen, president of the EU executive branch, had traded text messages with Pfizer's chief executive while negotiating the deal, journalists were quick to ask for those records under the bloc's transparency rules. The European Union refused, and the New York Times challenged that refusal in court. This May, an EU court ruled that the bloc had failed to explain in a plausible manner why it had not released the records in response to that ruling. The bloc's executive branch, the European Commission, this week gave the Times a more detailed account, but it may do little to soothe the concerns of transparency activists, for whom the protracted battle has become a flashpoint. The Commission's response implies that it destroyed or lost the messages after judging that they were not important and had no obligation to keep them. The response confirms the text messages once existed, which the Commission hadn't voided, stating clearly, it says that Bjorn Siebert, Ms. von der Leyen's head of cabinet, read them in the summer of 2021. Just think about that. That's amazing. The Commission says that Mr. Siebert determined that the message's sole aim was scheduling and that they did not need to be retained. The Commission says it now cannot find texts and suggests without stating explicitly that it no longer has them. It explains that Ms. von der Leyen has replaced her phone repeatedly since 2021 without fully transferring the data to her new devices. And it says when Mr. Siebert recently reached her latest device and her messages on the Signal app, he did not find the exchanges. They're going out of their way, absolutely out of their way, to make sure that nobody gets any information from that period of time. And it comes down to Vanderland. She's the one that is theoretically the point person for all this. Like, the buck stops here. Well, she's had at least 3 phones since then, and none of them have any of the new information. It's just like, oh, fuck it. Give me a new phone, give me a new Signal app, and the hell with the rest of that. And this is kind of what's been going on with Mercury retrograde. And one of the things that she also did recently was let me see if I can get this here. Okay, so I'm using AI to translate this article. And let me see if I can bring this up. So von der Leyen started to bitch about freedom of speech. And this is from June 18th. There's a much more recent one. And these are her words, though. Ursula von der Leyen says that freedom of speech is like a virus and censorship is the vaccine. Isn't that interesting? EU politicians want to silence us, warns one X-platform user. Other similar posts have appeared online, most of them accompanied by a video of the European Commission president supposedly saying these words. So this is from Radio Genoa. Ursula von der Leyen says free speech is like a virus and censorship is its vaccine. Well, we just saw the fact that they didn't like what was being texted to them about the vaccine, did they? By certain journalists. It's like, no, we're just going to go ahead and ditch these. This is just all about scheduling. That's fucking bullshit. Now, recently, I believe as recent as last week, and so this COVID thing has kind of taken off, and she still has not been held accountable for this. Just getting rid of the scheduling. That's all. That's all she did. But she said something recently. And it had to do with the fact that she could not guarantee freedom of speech any longer to journalists in Europe. And let me see if I can just find this thing here. Von der Leyen reporters. Meaning that they're not going to be protected and their sources won't be protected. See if I can find this thing. Yeah. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is all going to start to come out in the wash, and not just in Europe, but we're using this because it's right on the front lines, and this does have to do with Vanderland. So let me bring this up here. Says, okay, so the EU is basically saying that spyware is justified. So I'll show you this. This is from the this has just come out, and Vanderland she commented on this, titled like a slogan from Orwell's 1984: "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." The EU's Media Freedom Act (EMFA) took effect Friday, August 8th. Yeah, Mercury retrograde. While the EU hailed EMFA as a major milestone for media freedom, the regulation restricts media freedom and paves the way for shackling free speech. Quite literally. And here you go. This is Vanderland right here. A free and independent press is an essential pillar of our democracy. Really. With our European Media Freedom Act, we want to improve its protection so journalists can continue their crucial work in safety without interference or intimidation. What the fuck does all that mean? And anytime you get into language like the European Media Freedom Act, that's like hold on a second. That's like Patriot Act territory, right? It's exactly what it's like. All right. But she co-signed on this thing. I went back. Come on. Article 4 of the EMFA, allegedly intended to curb government surveillance, includes troubling loopholes that still allow for the use of intrusive spyware against journalists, activists, and other men. So they're essentially okay. This is their logic. Their logic is we're going to use this spyware and all these things at our disposal to make sure that nobody's lying to you. And we have the tools, just trust us. The clause in question outlines when governments can deploy intrusive surveillance software, such as spyware, when justified by an overriding reason of public interest. Well, who determines that? Like, this is really weird Pluto and Aquarius territory, right? Like the blob, like the public is supposed to somehow have this like mediocre conscience that sprouts up whenever the state needs it to. If there's some issue that the state finds distasteful or uncomfortable, they'll just roll out the sort of the mid blob and say, go ahead, use those tools, protect us from the people that want to wake us up. We don't want to be awake. We want to be asleep. Just use those tools, keep us asleep. Those other people are fucking alarm clocks. We don't need them. That's really what it comes down to. The clause in question outlines when governments can deploy intrusive surveillance. And this is like crazy. Surveillance must be authorized by EU or national law, approved in advance, or in emergencies retroactively. How do you deploy it for a retroactive emergency? Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of creative ways. By judicial or independent authority and used only when no other less restrictive measure would be adequate and sufficient to obtain the information sought. What are we talking about here? Like, what kind of information? Are you talking about information where somebody's going to blow up an embassy? Or are you going to talk about information where somebody has a shit ton of text and email messages between certain big pharma companies and the heads of the EU? Like, whose safety are they looking after at that point? As if it wasn't bad enough, the regulation also allows surveillance in cases believed to involve offenses punishable by at least 3 to 5 years in prison under national law. So you can have the best interests at heart for the people of fill in the blank, Spain, Italy, Bulgaria, whatever, right? And that may not be how it's being interpreted by a court of law. So here's where it gets very interesting. That would not only include terrorism or organized crime, but also broadly defined categories such as racism and xenophobia. In Germany, for example, incitement to hatred, Volksverschwörung, can currently, in most cases, severe cases, carry a penalty up to 5 years in prison. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that if you're a German and let's say your niece got raped by a crazed out Sudanese motherfucker, right? And then got passed along to all of his crazed out Sudanese motherfucker friends. If you were to write about that, complain about that, explicitly draw attention to that, you could be charged with racism and xenophobia. These are all very, very loosey-goosey terms. While the EMFA sounds restrictive and aimed at protecting rights, it still opens the doors to potential abuse. The definitions of public interest, serious offense, or what qualifies as urgent or proportionate are all subjective and could be bent by governments or Brussels. That means spyware could be used against journalists or political opponents of the right. Boxes are checked, especially if national law permits it. Although the regulation invokes the EU's principle of proportionality, the actual thresholds remain open to interpretation. With significant discretion left to national governments, civil liberties advocates, and journalism organizations, fear the measure could legitimize state surveillance of journalists and whistleblowers, provided that the right legal justifications are in place. It was supposedly meant to bolster press freedom, may in practice become a backdoor for undermining it. You don't say. You don't say that they could come up with a technology, spyware, loopholes, law that are there to theoretically protect the people, but really what they're doing their best is to make sure that they shut the dialogue down. And I feel like this Mars and Libra is going to bring this front and center in a very, very big way. You know, here in this country, we already talked about how Trump began to walk back, you know, support for Israel versus getting funds from FEMA, right? Like, but we're starting to see this now, and I haven't been able to. Maybe somebody in the chat can figure it out, but I've heard that very soon you're going to have to put digital ID just to get on YouTube. I know it's happening in Russia. I believe it's happening in England. And in fact, some of the more pernicious hate speech laws and the what we would call First Amendment rights are really being challenged in a huge way in England as people start to finally wake up out of this slumber that they've been in for the past 15 years. And now it's hit critical mass, and they don't know quite what to do with it, except that they can't live with it any longer. Now, one of the things that we did look at, and there was quite a bit of this happening during Mercury retrograde, was this whole idea of re-immigration. And there were a number of scenes in places like Spain, Italy, and even England, I think Germany to a lesser extent, where there were people that were, I wouldn't call them flat out rioting, but they had had enough, right? They have had enough of being told how to think, what to say about how they think, and the people in their environment, which seem to have gotten a leg up much faster than some others would like to believe. So there's that going on. This has all been happening during Mercury retrograde, and this idea of this chipping away, because when we look at Mercury and Leo, you know, we know that Mercury is in its fall in Leo, so it likes to tell really good stories, and it likes to talk a really good game. But it also feels like when it goes through a retrograde period like this, we have a greater sense as to what's important to us, right? That even the tallest tale, or even the ability to talk shit, and hey, you may have to back your shit up, but the ability to do that is intrinsic in part of this deal that we made here in this country with the West. So a lot of that has unfortunately been eroded in other parts of the world. But this Mercury retrograde really has been pretty serious in terms of showing us just how absolutely despotic the people that want to control the conversation will go to such great lengths in order to control it. And that kind of brings us back to the beginning of the show when we were talking about Nick Fuentes, who happens to be a Leo, talking about Tucker Carlson, Taurus, Candace Owens, Taurus, and this idea that there are now not just, it's amazing. This is kind of what I love about Pluto and Aquarius. Sort of like, okay, we're going to have these controlled gateway pundits. Tucker Carlson, who again, I still am on the record that I do like Tucker Carlson, even though I think he's disingenuous. I still like him. Candace Owens, whom I like a lot less now. I don't like what she did with Nick. I thought it was petty. It was mean. It was mean girl energy. She was hitting him with mean girl energy, and he can take it. Don't get me wrong. But it was like, okay, these are the people that are going to control this narrative, right? You're going to have Tucker. You're going to have Candace. Maybe you'll get Dave Smith in the mix. Maybe another person or two. Right? But they're the ones that are going to control the dialogue, right? And what's happened is that Nick Fuentes came in and said, well, hold on a second. That may not be the entirety of the dialogue. Like your version of the dialogue fits nicely over here, but it doesn't include this other part over here. And when you include the two of them together, then we have a very different kind of dialogue, for lack of a better term. And so this is, to me, like when this whole Mercury retrograde stuff started to kick in and started to move into this opposition with Pluto, what it was doing is breaking down the role of the gatekeeper. I mean, this is really what we're witnessing. And it's like, it's amazing. I mean, if you can't see it now with your own eyes, I don't know what more you need. Like, look at Charlie Kirk. I mean, Charlie Kirk was never anybody I ever took very seriously. But he's trying to insert himself into the discussion, and he can't because he has no credibility. He's a gatekeeper. Charlie Kirk is a limited hang. And I do like a lot of the interviews that Tucker is bringing to the table, but he's feeling very gatekeepy. Candace Owens feeling it's like these are the people that are going to be allowed to break the information. I was talking about Peter Thiel. As soon as Trump announced him as his vice president, I told you the fucking Peter Thiel story. I compared it to Obama. Like he was the hillbilly Obama. I mean, to the fucking T. To the point where he even goes and works for the same law firm in Chicago as Obama. Right? And I'm like, well, here you go. Here's all you need to know about J.D. Vance and then Peter Thiel and some of his other buddies from Palantir, right? Like, it was all there. And Candace Owens comes along and does a show last week and compares Peter Thiel to Barack Obama. And boy, that's just, that's just neon and headlines for her people. Shit, we were talking about that when J.D. Vance was nominated. That's how long we've been talking about it. So do you understand what I'm saying? It's sort of like Candace she's been anointed. And I think for Candace, I can't say the same for Tucker, but for Candace, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she's probably aligned with the Jesuits. That's what I think. And I really, really liked Candace. I liked her spirit. I liked her spunk. I liked it when she got in there with Shmuley. Great job. And then when she fucked with Nick Fuentes, like, why are you doing this? You are now committing the greatest sin there is. You're now coming off like a gatekeeper. And I suppose if you wanted to, you can make the case that Candace wants to be able to continue to roll out the Israel bad, Zionism bad, neocon bad script while separating herself out from quote unquote hateful agents like Dan Bilzerian or Nick Fuentes. But I don't think that those kinds of rules work anymore. When we're in Pluto and Aquarius now, we even even with this retrograde cycle with Pluto and Aquarius, those rules don't work. They it's like a whole. If you were on a episode of Star Trek and you wound up on a certain planet, and whatever the physical laws of those planet were, well, it's one of those weird worlds where they have to figure out that every time they say yes, they mean no, and every time they say no, they mean, they would run into stupid shit like that in some of these worlds. I feel like that's kind of where we are now with Pluto and Aquarius, because the same rules, they don't apply anymore. Like, if you were Candace, you could have gotten away with that with Nick Fuentes maybe a year ago. With Pluto and Capricorn, you might be able to stuff it in the laundry drawer, right? I don't think it works that way anymore. You try to play like these traditional gatekeeping rules. It's not. It's like Vanderland with this. Oh yeah, we're here to help people with free speech. We're here to make sure that the speech and the news that they're getting is good for them and protected. So as a result of that, we'll use any means necessary to deploy spyware to make sure that we're eliminating people who are going to challenge our position. So this is what we're really looking at now, is we're looking at these wars between gatekeepers, because information right now is so vital. It's incredibly powerful. Like, if you watched how many people, again, whatever you think of Nick Fuentes, whenever you watch how many people he flipped who were Tucker people or Candace people, that's power, right? That is power. When you can have 500,000 people watch a stream because you are directly refuting people like this is the worst thing that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson could have done. They've made him immensely popular. They've taken hits to their own popularity, and they're being shown that there's no more room for gatekeeping. Like, it's not going to happen. Now, if it does somehow manage to happen, it won't look like gatekeeping. It'll look more like a cult versus gatekeeping. That's a different story. But it can't happen, because we're just going to call them the ions of truth. The ions of truth are not going to be allowed to be rearranged in a way where it is comfortable for a small group of people to cordon off information or have it used against other groups of people, no matter how small or large. This is quite critical, actually. And when everything really coalesces, 2026 is going to be a very significant year. 2025 we knew would be difficult, and it's been pretty difficult. But 2026 is where we begin to diverge. I know Sammy says 2025, but I think 2026 is the beginning of the divergence. And it's going to come down to two things. It's going to be very fundamental. You're either going to believe the story of the world as it is being told to you by the people who have been employed to tell that story, or you're going to have a very different view of the world. And you will not need those people. You will not have to depend on their version of the story. You will be dealing with the world on a one-to-one basis. It will not be mediated. And gatekeepers mediate the world experience. And yes, we'll have more AI and all the other stuff that goes along with it. But I also feel like that how do I say this? If we didn't have as much outside crap interfering with us, and we could just go down the list, right? Genetically modified foods, fluoride in the water, whatever's in the atmosphere with chemtrails, whatever's in the jabs, the 5G, whatever level of electro smog and static we're all living with, all this stuff gets in the way of our being able to evolve. Like it's almost all placed there just to throw roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, so that we're trying to either get better physically, get better emotionally, get better psychologically, right? Just hold it together so that, we can get our feet under us and deal with this so-called version of the physical world. Well, if we didn't have all those impediments, where do you think we would be in terms of development? Oh, we'd be much further along. I guarantee you that right now. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because we still have the ability to mutate. And I do think that there are a number of us who are kind of mutants living amongst one another. And I know some of you feel that way. And in fact, I know a lot of you have really interesting gift and prowess and ability to deal with certain things, and whether it's heal or you have your own superpower. Some of you have more than one superpower, right? And I firmly believe that we're sitting on these things. Some of them are latent, some of them are not so latent. But it feels to me like everybody's worrying about what's going to happen with AI, what's going to happen, how are we going to interface with reality? It's going to become so much more difficult. And I feel like we're going to evolve. As we go through these outer planetary changes, we're going to evolve. We're going to have the skills that will help us discern and determine what's real and what's not real, right? It's like the universe is upping the ante in some ways. So don't fret too much, right, about what's coming and our ability to deal with it, because I think we'll be able to deal with it. I think the harder part is the people or the entities that want to control the flow of information, that keep us from sharing these things in a way where a small minority would feel incredibly threatened. Because that's really what it's all about. It's a minority of people, if they're even people at all. I'm not even sure they're people. By the way, Ursula von der Leyen's chart is not that spectacular. I mean, I've looked at it before. Some of you might have seen it, but in case you haven't, I'm happy to bring it up here and show it to you guys one more time. So this is Ursula von der Leyen's chart. And again, we're just going to go on. Well, like this is her time, but her birth. We don't know her birth time. The one thing that, I mean, she's got all this Libra, right? When you look at her, she's just so freaking Libran. She's, oh, look at her. She's so refined. She's the epitome of the modern European woman, and equal to her husband, who is a multi-billion-dollar big pharma scientist who comes from a silkworm dynasty, just like any other ordinary person, right? But she's got all this Libra. And if I was somebody who was put in charge of the EU to find somebody to be in charge of the EU, I'd pick her. Venus in Libra, Sun in Libra, Mercury in Libra, Trudeau in Libra, I'd pick her. She'll be polite, right? It's not terrible to look at. Here you go. Women of Europe, there's your role model. Now, the one thing that I will say about this woman is this Mars in Gemini scoring off against Pluto in Virgo. She'll do anything. She will do anything to get ahead. I'm telling you right now, this woman is ruthless. Absolutely, utterly ruthless. Right? And that is the one major square right there. Right? And she's kooky. For all you Moon Uranus gals out there, bless your souls. Some of you make the best new agey mothers. In her case, who knows? Mother Europe. Doesn't have a lot of earth in her chart, does she? Can she relate to the quote unquote common man or woman? I don't think so. I gotta say, it's a pretty unspectacular chart. However, if I wanted to put her in charge of the EU and have somebody be inoffensive and Libran and sort of just work with everybody, she'd be right at the top of my list. She has the moon of 14 degrees Leo, same as Ghislaine Maxwell. I thought that was kind of interesting. She at least shared an aspect with somebody that was, shall we say, a little devious. But I just kind of wanted to go over Mercury retrograde tonight and sort of look back on what happened and how some of these things went down and where they're going to go, because they're just starting to rear their ugly head. I mean, we're going to have to stare down this whole digital ID. Here's the problem. The problem is that people finally started to talk about Israel, and people finally started to talk about Zionist power and neocon power, and then that conversation drifted into American Jewish power, right? And does American Jewish power support America first, or does it support Israel first? And so this discussion now is spreading like wildfire, and in a way that I have never seen ever before in my lifetime. Like this thing has gone from 0 to 60 in about, I don't know, 18 months, really, maybe a little bit longer. And so when you have something like that, when you have people starting to question who's done what and to whom and how and for how long, blah, blah, blah. What happens? The people who want to keep that dialogue clamped down shut will do anything in their power to make sure that people stop talking about it. Look at what's happening in Europe, right? With this new little spyware thing. Oh, what are you talking about? Oh, is that going to be hateful towards some group? Well, gee, maybe we should just put you on ice for a few years so you can really think about it. This is kind of where things are headed, because we're in this territory where certain groups are not going to be well disposed around how they believe they're being perceived. It's the way it is. So this is going to be a major kind of battlefield moving forward. And every time we go through another round of Mercury retrograde, I think we have one more this year, you'll see more and more of this start to come up again. Like, this is going to be one of the fundamental sort of replays of Mercury retrogrades. And but I think ultimately at the end, it's not going to work. Ultimately, there's too many cracks. There's too many cracks in the dike. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's too many. And the last resort would be the complete gutting of the internet, which I don't think is that far behind, to be honest with you. When I do search results on Google, it's like, why even do search results anymore? They're ridiculous. So I could see the internet going down, and then unfortunately the other part of this would be to wipe out an entire generation that has a stake in the game, has a beef. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. Traditionally, it's always been a war, but we're living in a different time, and it doesn't always have to be a war. We certainly saw what happened in 2020, didn't we? So I think as we kind of round this thing off and sort of bring it into the station here, my goal tonight was to expose some of the things that was going on in Europe, particularly with the EU, particularly with this retrograde material, the discovery that they just got rid of all these text messages. I mean, talking about absolutely, utterly corrupt, right? And now they've got this new kind of spyware initiative, which is supposed to be good for everybody. So I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to, take a look at because a lot of times we don't really talk about Europe a whole lot. A lot of this tends to be sort of US centric, but it'll be interesting because I feel like there's also this other turning of the tide, and it's going to be a real clash of civilizations in some ways. And the clash of civilizations is the van der Leyens of the world who want to continue to maintain and gatekeep and control and make sure that there are very stiff penalties for people who are telling the truth, versus a whole group of people who are finally having the sleep sort of, get wiped from the eyes. I watched Dark City again the other night, and it's a mind-blowing movie. I absolutely love Dark City. And I had forgotten that the key the key for Rupert Sewell's character, what was his name? John Braddock or something. The key for him is that when he's brought into that world, that he doesn't sleep through this kind of transmogrification of Dark City, right? He's actually able to stay awake, and he has this thing called tuning that is at his disposal. There's something about tuning that allows him to kind of defrag the reality that he's in. And he doesn't even really know how to do it, but he just wants to get his wallet, and he sort of tunes right through the automat and grabs his wallet. I think there's a there, right? I think there's a there. So what I'm going to leave you with on this Piscean moon is to become aware of who you are in any given moment, right? There's like painful self-awareness, but then there's like a layer that's a layer beneath. You know what I mean? There's like 2 or 3 layers. Like if you can get to that third layer of self-awareness, things can become very interesting, right? And you become aware of certain phenomena around you. And I know that our lives get really busy. We get caught up with a lot of shit, right? But it's a slight challenge. My slight challenge to you is to become aware, or to affirm and decree the awareness that you have the ability to do certain things in a moment that may not necessarily be on schedule. Right now, I'm not asking you to go out and do stupid shit or, try to pretend you have magical powers. But if you can sit back and watch some of these moments, just watch some of these moments and how you can unfold in those moments, you'll find out that you have more power than you understand. And there's always something really primal about things like paying attention and focusing, and even the use of one's own voice to invoke some kind of change in the environment. It could be a word, it could be a sentence, it could be anything. So Dark City is interesting because there's one guy who wakes up. He wakes up and he figures out that he has something. He's not quite sure what, but he has something. And he has to find out what that something is. And I feel like that's where we are. I mean, we can go through all the political stuff, and we'll look at all the time stuff, and things are going to, potentially unfold. But when we get into the outer planets, and once they reassemble, once the Avengers all come back, right? Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and they're all there again. We as a species are going to be remade. And I don't necessarily believe it will be completely artificial or artificially intelligent or biological in that regard. That's the story of the next iteration of the outer planets. It's sort of the remaking of who we are at a very deep and archetypal level. So keep sharpening your gifts, stay healthy, stay in the game, and we'll be back here on Tuesday for the Astro Weather. All right, I'll be posting on locals. I'll have my schedule as we head towards the Frank Jamboree, the Frankapalooza, and I'll put some other stuff up there as well. All right, take good care of yourselves. Treat each other well. God bless. Love you all. Robert Phoenix signing off.